All right, it's now June, and that means all of the May baseball card and sports card auctions are in the books. And so we're going to look at the breaking trends that you're seeing in the values right now. If you're not familiar with us, here we are at Sports Cards Edge. We've discovered that using data gives us a huge advantage in making money with sports cards. And so we want you along for the journey as well, as we will take you through the best of what we've known. And make sure you like and subscribe so you can see our updates as we go. And if you're not familiar with our Sports Cards Index, we look at the past 250,000 most recent auctions of the most popular sports cards of all time. And we focus on cards that are primarily in the $100 to $10,000 range. So these are cards that people just like yourself and myself will have. So for example, we are not tracking how the $12 million Mickey Mantle rookie card is doing over time, but we are tracking your $175 Ken Griffey Jr. PSA 9 card. And if you want to check out the index anytime for yourself, there's a link in the description. So let's get into it. This is the latest update for the Baseball Card Sports Index. You can see it's coming in at 292, so that means your cards are worth about 3 times as much as they were since 2017. If you look at the past 5 years, since 2019, your card values on average have doubled. They're up 91%. And then when you look at the trends around last month, it's been flat at about 1%. In the last 3 months, last year, even the last 3 years, it looks like it's down a fair amount. But really, we have to remember that the reason I have all 5 years on here is that there's different phases to the trends here. So I like to look at the pre-pandemic, the pandemic phase, the peak of 2021, post-pandemic, and then the present. And so one of the key things to really keep in mind is if you look at the pre-pandemic, we were coming in around 175 index. We are still well above that, in line with the pandemic values. Of course, everyone wishes for the days of the peak, but I think that was not sustainable. There was too much injection of money and hype, and there was a lot of, I think, crypto money at the time that was flowing into the market. So things have settled down. Actually, for the last about 3 years, the market's been relatively flat, which for the way that we make money flipping sports cards is great. A flat market still gives us plenty of opportunity to use data to make money. So it's been a great last few years. But over that time, your card values have probably held fairly constant. And be sure to check back here if at any time we fall below that pandemic value. If the index gets really below 200 here, we will be the first to alert you. But your baseball cards are generally holding strong in that post-pandemic phase, and we will keep an eye on it, making sure that there's still that at least pandemic level of interest. And of course, the more people that are interested in sports cards, the more valuable all of our cards are together. Now looking at basketball, you'll notice the peak for basketball was much higher than in baseball. So the index was over 1,700. So the cards at the peak were 17 times more valuable than their 2017 averages. Whereas if we go back to baseball real quick here, it's not going to let me do that. It was closer to about 700, so 7%, 7 times higher. And then again, in the world of basketball card values, I like to look at the pre-pandemic, the pandemic peak, post and present. And so basketball is one that's obviously fallen off the most from the peak, but it also had the most, I think, overvalued peak values. It is interesting to follow basketball. I think basketball had a lower index, less interest than before. And so their values definitely increased the most through the pandemic. But its present values are below what I would say was the pandemic values, and we'll keep an eye on it to make sure it's still above the pre-pandemic levels. So the good news is your basketball cards are still worth 3 times as much as what they were before the pandemic, but we'll keep an eye on how those values do over time. Be sure to like and subscribe and come back here for that. Over to the football cards. We come in at a 258 index for May. So if you look over the last 5 years, your football cards have increased by 121%. So they're more than twice as valuable as they were over the last 5 years. They are down over the last 3 years, but since then, the last year and the last 3 months and month or so, they've been pretty flat. I also really like, if you pull out the numbers here, that currently football cards are still valued well above the pre-pandemic levels, in line or just maybe below the pandemic levels. And so that's definitely something to keep an eye on. And as a quick reminder, notice the peak for football cards were only 8 times the value of the 2017 average prices compared to basketball at 17 times. So definitely the money at the peak was in basketball. That's something that I always keep in mind, that I've invested more in basketball cards, that there's another rush of interest. Those are the cards that people seem to go to. In hockey, now I will say that hockey has the lowest volume of sports cards traded, but the index comes in at 319, which is holding flat from last month. It is up a little bit from the last 3 months, but that's more of a dip of one of these lower months 3 months ago. Over the last 5 years, your hockey cards are worth almost 3 times as much as they were before, so up 172%. And then if we do again the builds here, you can see at present values, they're still in line with the pandemic phase, well above the pre-pandemic phase. So hockey card interest is still doing really well. Obviously down from the peak of 750, but the present values are holding good over the last year or so at the pandemic levels, and it is my hope that this continues. I love my O-Pee-Chee Gretzky rookie card. We'll keep an eye on these trends for you. Thank you so much. Make sure you like and subscribe and follow us for more tips. And then every month we'll be doing updates like this.